and welcome to Journeys and Journals. I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and I get to meet the people, our neighbors and friends. And I met a young one this time that I am so excited. Want you to meet Jordan. She's got a story to tell us that you won't believe. History. Jordan, welcome to Journeys and Journals.
Thank you.
What brings you here?
Well, my grandmother is the third generation Oregonian, and their great-great-grandparents came to Oregon in a covered wagon.
Now that's history. Well, let's meet her. What's your grandma's name?
My grandmother's name is Kathy Hake.
Kathy, welcome.
Thank you.
And this is a chance meeting.
Yes, it is.
I just happened to be at a luncheon at your church.
Yes.
Sat down at your table, and there we are, a different day. And from that, you started telling me stories. Stories of you, your grandma,
My grandmother, parents.
and grandpa. Now today, we've got pictures to prove it. Who are your grandparents?
Well, they came to Oregon from Ireland in the 1800s, and they homesteaded up by Myrtle Point, close to Dora, which is a little tiny place. You have to look at it on a map.
Now, is Dora there anymore?
Just a cemetery now where they're buried.
Oh, they are.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So if I wanted to go to Dora Cemetery, I would drive.
Yeah. Well, out of Myrtle Point, and you go through Gravel Ford, and just follow the windy road all the way up.
You did say Gravel Ford.
Gravel Ford, yes. That used to be a little logging town.
How creative. Huh? Hey, this Ford. And have you been to Gravel Ford?
I have not, no.
Oh, so that's just in your
I have
future.
taken all my girls, but she hasn't been on the trip yet.
Uh-huh. Well, now, tell me, these are Irish guys, right?
Yeah, Crosby, James Crosby,
And?
Iona Crosby
Iona's maiden name?
was Kyle.
Well, now, how did they happen?
I'm sorry, Weekly. Kyle's my other one. She was a Weekly.
How did they happen to be coming in that covered wagon?
Well, that was my mother's parents. These are my father's parents.
Aha.
Yes.
And this belongs to who?
That belonged to these people right here, my grandma and grandpa,
Oh.
Crosby.
And they came.
They came from Ireland to the ranch, and when they first met, I think she was like 15 or 16, and she wrote him a note, and she said, "Accept, my friend, these lines from me. They show that I remember thee, and hope some thought they will retain, till you and I shall meet again. When I, poor elf, have vanished in vapor, but don't forget me on this paper, from a friend."
Oh my goodness.
And
So
it's dated 1890. And she braided her hair in the shape of a heart and sent it to him.
So it would be a folded, like a greeting card.
Yes.
And look here, you can see that it was together because the imprint of the
Yes.
hair. This is priceless. A little bit of fabric and a little bit of gold and the hair. Braided, and the ends are right here as part of the decoration. Now, did you know your grandma?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Tell me about her.
She loved kids, and one of my favorite memories is she had a lot of chickens, and so do I.
Okay.
She calls me the chicken lady. Anyway.
And does she let you gather eggs?
Yeah, well, when we first bought the chickens, I was in charge of them at first, and then we used to live together, and then when we moved apart, she took the chickens.
Yeah. Because I have the space for them.
Were you a 4-H'er or?
No, I just liked animals, and we decided to get chickens, so.
And now Grandma's got the
Yes.
chickens.
Yeah. Anyway, one of my favorite memories is she let me go out in her chicken house and I'd play school with the chickens.
Did you ever teach them anything?
I probably not. One interesting thing about my grandparents when they were on the ranch in the 1800s is they were so far from anyone that there was a lot of Indian trouble that the neighbors would have. When I say neighbors, I'd be like 10
miles away.
Miles away, yeah. But my grandmother, when she'd take something out of the garden, or they'd butcher a beef or get venison, she'd put it out by the road for the Indians, and they'd come along and they'd take it, and then they'd leave her things in its place. So they were paying, in their mind for they weren't just, it wasn't a charity thing. They exchanged. And one of the things they exchanged was this grinding stone that is very comfortable to a woman's hand, if you want to feel it. It's very comfortable to hold.
And this would be a way to grind acorns and grind
corn or whatever in a mortar and pestle, and then they would also use it to grind like this. See how it's flat on one side?
I do. This is interesting.
Yeah.
Now this came down through the family line to you. Lucky lady.
I know. And then this came out of the ranch house. That doesn't exist anymore, obviously. But this went on the wall, and you could move it, and it held the oil lamp.
Then you'd have light up.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it went high up on the wall.
Now, do you know what happened to that house?
Oh, it was torn down eventually, yeah.
But that's pioneer spirit.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. Now, how have you written these stories down about?
No, but my other daughters have videotaped me telling them. Yeah.
And now your schooling, does that require you writing things like this? You're still a student, right?
Yes.
She's homeschooled.
I'm 17 and I'm homeschooled.
Mm-hmm.
I've been homeschooled for 4 or 5 years now, and
What do you think of homeschooling?
I love it. I'm so glad that my mom pulled me out of public school. I went to public school until about 5th grade, and then I went to a private school for 2 years, and then I went to homeschooling, and I'm just so glad that she did that because it's made me closer with my parents. It's given me time to do things that normal kids don't have time to do.
Like come on Better Life TV, for instance.
Exactly.
Skip school for the day.
Yes.
She's a competitive ice skater, and she's a competitive dressage rider.
I used to be.
Yes.
I worked at horse ranches when I was 13, and I stopped working at ranches about a year ago.
Now, this work, is that part of your schooling?
In a way, yeah, it's taught me a lot of things, like work ethic. It's funny because my mom, I guess there's a curriculum called unschooling, which is a weird term for it. But instead of spending all day at home reading books and math books and everything, you learn from life experiences. And like I also work at a bakery, so I learn measurements and I learn how to deal with food and to cook, and it just teaches me same math structures and literature things just from life experience.
What do you think of this non-traditional schooling?
I love it.
Oh, you do?
This is a dear girl. And I just love her to pieces.
I can see that. But were you in favor of this when
yes.
Is this your son or daughter?
This is my daughter. Mm-hmm.
Your daughter's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And you were always in favor of this non-traditional. Maybe it is traditional. If you went way back, everybody
homeschooled.
If you lived that far away.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, let's talk about the next generation, because these are grandparents.
Mm-hmm. My grandparents, yes. Her great-grandparents.
And now your
great-grandparents.
Okay. Yes.
And my mother and father, this was my father's family. And my mother's family used to have orange orchards in Visalia, California. And my grandmother got malaria. And so she was told to move to a cool climate with not very much sun.
Oh, because Visalia has sun,
yes.
and heat.
Heat, yes. And so they were also Irish, and I'm 100% Irish.
Okay.
And so Bandon is named after a town in Ireland.
Did not know that.
And so they moved to Bandon and settled there. And
There must be quite a few Irish there. Then.
I think there are, yeah. The Irish founded Bandon, yes.
By the sea.
Yeah, Bandon by the sea, yeah. And so when my mother was about 16, she loved to dance, and my father loved to dance too, and they met at the dance hall in Gravel Ford. That's like in between Bandon and where my dad lived.
Gravel
Ford, yes. And their eyes met across the crowded room. But she was with another gentleman, and so my dad asked if he could take her out. This was on a Friday night, if he could take her out on Saturday night, and she said yes. She was quite a bold lady, and because
How old?
she was 16 at the time, but my dad was over 21 and a logger, and she knew she was going to have some problems with her mom, but and she told her mom all about him and everything, and so my grandmother told her that you're not going out with him. He's way too old for you, and he's a logger. And so he came to the door, and my dad was quite a handsome man, and he brought flowers, and he drove up in a brand new Whippet.
What's a Whippet?
That's I think it was a Ford. It was a classy little car, yeah. And so he drove up and came up and knocked at the door and greeted my grandmother quite cordially. And my grandmother goes, Leela, Clifford's here. And so they got married 3 months later.
Would it last?
And they were married till they passed away, yeah. They were married over 60 years.
60 years?
Yeah,
what a heritage.
Yeah. I don't remember much my great-grandparents, but one of the few things I do remember is every time I would go into her house, it always smelled like coffee. She was a major coffee person, and she always had a pot of coffee going. And
I even have a story about that later.
Well, now, are these the people that we're talking about?
These are my parents. This is their wedding picture.
Oh, what? Now, I have never seen a veil quite like that. That is.
She probably made it.
Oh, do you think?
Yeah,
she was pioneer stock.
Yeah.
Huh? And here they are dressed up.
I think this is their honeymoon. I'm not sure, but.
Oh
yes.
my goodness! Now tell me about you. You've told me the names.
Leela McHugh was my mother, and Clifford Crosby was my father.
Oh, Clifford and Leela.
Mm-hmm.
And these are all them here on this picture.
Uh-huh.
Oh, lots of corsages.
Yes.
He was not only thoughtful when he was dating her.
Yeah, and they were quite the dancers. They used to win dance contests and everything.
Do you know where?
What's that?
Where was it?
At Gravel Ford. That was a big dance hall back then. Yeah, where everybody gathered.
Oh,
yeah.
sure.
And she told me that they won quite a few dance contests. And she'd tell me about doing the Black Bottom, the Charleston, and all that.
Oh, this talks like history. Now, are you a dancer?
Not necessarily. I used to be in ballet for a little bit for my figure skating, but I hope to get into swing dancing soon, because a lot of the people in our church are major swing dance people, and so I'd like to get more into that.
Now, you said you're skating.
Yes.
Where do you skate?
At the rink in Medford. And
have you gone to competition elsewhere?
Yes, I competed at a competition in Eugene, but mostly I've just competed at the local competitions at the rink, and I've done several exhibitions there. There's an annual exhibition every year at Klamath Falls, and I did an exhibition in Ashland as well.
And do you wear costumes and
Yeah, not necessarily costumes, but the traditional figure skating attire, the dress, and
that, I think this is great. So in Klamath, they have a rink where they have competition too.
yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Grandma goes along.
Oh,
Odds.
yes. I'm there.
And
My grandma Crosby used to love figure skating,
Yes.
and when she was alive, she loved it. And so every time I go out on a competition or exhibition, it's always for her. I've always skated for my grandma Crosby.
Ah, well, that's great. So then this tradition keeps going on and on. You got a picture or two there.
This is, they used, after my parents were married, he was a logger, as I mentioned, and they would travel in the logging camps, and they'd load up everything on their little whippet here and travel from camp to camp as the logging woods moved.
And when they got there, did they pitch a tent or
Oh,
what?
yes, and my mother always had the best one. My dad would always build a wood floor for it and put the tent in, and she had a wood stove. And so in the morning, all the men would come over to get warm on the wood stove, and she said she had to get dressed under the blankets.
Oh my, logging the way it was done over at the
Yes.
coast, huh?
And this is my dad. He was in the CCCs in Weimar, Oregon, up here.
Oh, really?
And he taught the young men how to drive the Caterpillar.
So he
That's
was
him.
a CCC teacher.
Instructor, yes.
Instructor. We don't know too much about that sort
Yeah.
of thing, and I hope you write that down.
Yeah.
Because CCC was Conservation Corps, civilian.
Civilian Conservation Corps.
And you wonder, well, where did it go? The Depression had so many people out of work.
Yes.
And the young man could go to one of these camps,
Yes.
get paid $25 a month, I'm told. 5 of those dollars were his to spend any way he wanted, but the 20 went back to Grandma and Grandpa.
Right.
Or Mom and Dad.
Yeah, it helps support families.
And then what happened? Where did CCC camps go?
I've tried to locate it up there. I've gotten in the general area, but it's on private property now, so you can't really get there.
Somebody out there is going to tell us
Yeah.
just where. War broke out, and that was the end of that.
Right, and then because my dad was really good at cat work, he got chosen to build Camp White. He did all the leveling for Camp White.
Really?
Yes, and he didn't have to go to the war because it was deemed priority. So he spent the war years at Camp White doing all the leveling, and White City making the roads and things like that.
Camp White, I'm sure, is like other Camp Adair and different camps. It was just fields, farms and farm
They called it the
fields.
desert, actually.
Yeah.
There was just nothing out there.
The Ag Desert.
Yes.
And they flattened it and built a community that was enormous. You've got more pictures. Where do we start?
Well, I've got a little story that about, let's see, of the china.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about the fancy china. Look at this gorgeous pattern with gold, no less.
Yes.
Where did it come from?
Well, and this also goes with it.
This is right out of the magazine,
Yes.
December of 1948.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
My mother collected this china piece by piece, and she kept the receipts.
What's it called?
It's called Gloria by Castleton.
Okay,
And she bought it from Lawrence's downtown Medford. And these are dated around 1953.
and she kept every
She kept
receipt.
the receipts, yes.
And so one piece would have been, well, $5. That's a bunch.
That's back then, yes.
And-
And they're really expensive now to replace them.
Oh,
And Lawrence's had a contest about their history, and so I wrote a little paragraph about fine china.
Please read that.
And I said, some of my favorite childhood memories are visits to Lawrence Jewelers with my mom. Once a week, I would have my ballet or tap lesson at Colleen Hope's dance studio at the corner of Main and Riverside. On our way home, we would stop at Lawrence's. I was always filled with awe as we would enter because of all the silver and sparkling crystal, where my mom would buy a piece of her beloved china. I now have inherited this extensive china set, Gloria by Castleton. My mom was so organized, she kept the receipts and the literature dated in the 50s. On the back of a receipt are the words to one of my tap numbers, The Ball and the Jack, of which I performed on the Criterion stage. When I pass by Lawrence's, I'm flooded with happy remembrances of shopping with my mother at these times that only exist in my memories.
Oh my, this is the booklet about it?
Yes.
This very pattern?
That's the literature about it. And this is me on the Criterion stage just after we did that number, The Ball and the Jack.
Aha. Now, so you are a dancer, you are a skater. What's the deal about that?
It just kind of runs in the family, I think. On here, if I can find it, is she wrote the words to that number because we sang it too. So.
Oh. So
it's all connected.
The Ball and the Jack. And this would have been 1950?
Most of them are from 53, yeah.
Back to you. What does it mean to have deep roots into...
It's really great. I love the fact that we're Irish. I've always loved the Irish culture, and I try to embrace my Irish heritage as much as possible, usually. So I've always loved, and I'm Irish on my father's side too, so as well as my mother's side. So that's always been, I'm very excited about that.
I was lucky enough to see the Irish dancing at the Criterion Theater several years ago.
Okay.
And clogging and
yes.
What are some of the other things called?
They do the Highland Fling and all that.
Very, very. I mean, I can't even imagine moving my fingers as fast as their feet were going.
Yeah.
I have a little thing that my third daughter wrote about Grandpa's house.
Oh, please.
And it has a reference to what Jordan was talking about. And this is what I grew up with. The early morning air is filled with the pungent aroma of fresh brewing coffee. Inside the tiny kitchen, Grandpa sits at the breakfast table reading the newspaper. His small reading glasses sit on the tip of his nose as he scans the paper intently. Grandpa sees me and reaches out to take my little hand in his, and we walk out to the garden. The grass is deep, rich hunter green from the irrigation. It feels moist cotton under my foot. Massive oak and willow trees provide shade from the bright sun rising over the hill. Grandpa's garden is lush and full. To one side, huge blackberry bushes entangle the barbed wire fence. Long rows of corn, green beans, carrots, and acorn squash fill the center. But the best thing about Grandpa's garden is his strawberry patch. Its long, spindly vines drape over the damp earth, blindly entangling everything in its path. Tall, overshadowing sunflowers bow their heads in the gentle wind as we stroll past. Angry black crows fly overhead, afraid to land for the fear of menacing scarecrows standing guard. Grandpa walks over to the smokehouse to check on the beef jerky, while I sample the sweet juices of a vine-ripened strawberry. The smokehouse is an old wood shack surrounded by weeds. There are no windows, just a chimney at the top to let the smoke out. Grandpa and I stopped to feed the goldfish on the way back to the house. The water in the pond has overflown into the grass since Grandpa irrigated. They swim around in the algae-covered lily pads up to the surface of the clear water searching for food. We enter the lattice-covered patio. Thick masses of coiled ivy weave in and out of the latticework. Baby blue jays chirp in their small nests hidden in the ivy. Grandpa rests on the porch swing while I enter the house through the back door. The strong aroma of coffee invades my senses as I enter the kitchen. The wooden floorboards creak under my feet and alert Mother that I'm there. She smiles at me and hands me a steaming cup of hot black coffee to take to Grandpa. Mother fixes me a bowl of cornflakes and sets it on the heavy oak breakfast table. I sprinkle of fresh strawberries on top and try not to crunch too loudly. After breakfast, I walk into the living room to watch television. I sink into the plush velour couch and stare dreamingly at my 2 favorite paintings of Blue Boy and Pinky hanging high above the red brick fireplace. Red, blue, and yellow flames dance along the burning logs as I snuggle deeper under Mother's crocheted afghan. As I drift off to sleep, I think that these are the days I will remember, my days spent at Grandpa's house. And that was written by Carrie Vincent, my 3rd daughter.
And when did she write this?
She wrote that September 2nd, 1993.
And I just noticed that's 7 months after I was born.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I just noticed that.
So that's the environment I grew up with. I grew up with gardening, and I'm a big gardener, too.
Oh, wonderful. May I come
inherited
visit?
that. Yes, I inherited that from my father.
You know, these are memories that are
Yes.
just rich, and I'm so glad that you can share them with our TV audience, because things that you've brought, I mean, this is truly history. It's a gift, an Indian gift.
Yes.
As so many of our stories get lost in, and this will never get lost because you know it too.
Yeah.
You have a minute to tell me your favorite things.
My favorite things that I like to do, or I love baking. I work at a bakery.
Growers Market?
Growers Market. I work at Growers Market every Saturday. And figure skating has obviously always been a passion for me. I've been figure skating since I was 9. Sadly, my skates broke down about 2 years ago, and I've been trying to get back on the ice for a while, but I can't progress right now. So I'm actually looking for a sponsor right now. My grandfather's looking for a sponsor for me.
Because it's costly, isn't it?
Yes.
Any kind of extracurricular, whether it's 4-H or Scouts or
And
anything.
the level I'm at right now, the figure skates are especially very expensive. I have to get them custom made in San Francisco.
She
and
just started into doubles,
yeah.
double jumps.
Well, we ran out of time, folks. I'm Bernie Martin Beck saying thanks for tuning in and hearing what young people do back 5 generations, huh?
Yes.